So, you want to know where I rank every single phobie as of this recording. We'll be starting off from keys 1 to 9 and rating them all the way from S, from what I use every single game, and what is extremely strong, to F, very weak and essentially pointless. Real quick, before the video starts, I want to announce that I'll be doing a viewer game breakdown, so if you're interested, join my Discord and I'll put a link below for that. Make sure to send a screenshot of your name and match, or write it down who you fought and your name. Either way is fine, just make sure to submit it to the viewer game breakdown section. Also, I'm currently working on a tournament right now, and it should be coming down the line, and there will be rewards. With that said, let's go back to the video. First up, we have Ted and Jill. Now, personally, I use Jill almost every game, and I think she's just cracked. Now, that being said, you will need to move her closer to a point because she has one movement, but it is definitely worth it when your opponent has to sacrifice something they really don't want to. So because of that, I will be giving both of them an A. Next up, we have Cowbell. So Cowbell is super sturdy and you really get what you're paying for. I also use him a lot, so he will also be getting an A. Now, Batula is an interesting one. I'm seeing more and more players use him in the higher ranks, and I'm honestly really surprised how good he is. You know, if a player does use his dimensional ability correctly, I think he can be very good, so because of that, I'm going to give it a B. So, Muffin Top is a weird one for me, and I feel like it's good, but it's extremely situational because you're essentially wasting one key just to get a heal off that really Clinico could consistently get off and it'd just be on the board. So, I'm going to have to give it a D because it's really just too situational for me. Next up is Contortio, and I really don't think he's the best one-cost phobie you should be summoning. You really should be summoning something like Cowbell or Razormouth. He's just really not that strong, not worth it for the zombie effect, so I'm going to give him a D as well. So like Contortio, AWOL has more damage than health, and this is more significant in AWOL. I really don't think the extra damage is necessary, and health is really important in one-cost phobie, so I'm going to give AWOL a D as well. Following this, we have Razormouth. Now, Razormouth is just solid, it's consistent. It will also get an A. I know a lot of players will use this. I think Cowbell's better, but Razormouth is a good one-cost phobie. Now we have Electricat, and there's really not much to say about this. No, but for real, Electricat is honestly super situational and weak. It's not pointless, so it will get a D. It's just a very bad card, and you probably shouldn't be using it as your one-cost phobie. Now, we've got the two spiders, and you may be wondering which one is better. Now, I'll let you decide. That's right, Sockassin is actually better. You want that poison damage and you want it fast. Nobody has the extra turns to let Henrietta slowly kill off units, and it's just not going to happen. So, Sockassin will actually get an A and Henrietta will get a B. Now, I'm sorry for your Boom fans out there, but it just gets a plain F. It's essentially pointless. It gets one shot by basically everything and takes way too long to set up. It's not worth it when you can summon more reliable phobies. Now, onto the two key phobies. Starting it off is Kerbloom. Kerbloom is just like Boom, where it takes too long to set up and can get one shot by most things. But I would say it's very situational and it can be good, so low D. Eternal Night is definitely a strong 2-cost if used correctly. It's a dimensional phobie, and if used correctly, it can kill things like Jar Cannon, and I really feel like it just deserves a B. Now, Rusty is just completely useless in virtually every game and a complete waste of keys, so definitely gets an F here. Suckee is honestly a pretty good card. It may be slow, but its tanking has good sustain and a charge. This card definitely gets a high B. K9000 is similar to Suckee, where it has good health and good damage, and it is 2-cost, but there's just better options, so this gets a C. Now, for Cassowary, I had a difficult time placing this phobie because I feel like it should be low S tier or high A tier. Its jump is great and it just does a lot of damage and can even kill jar cannons, but then again, there might be better phobies depending on the situation, so I'm going to give it a high A tier for this. Next up is Droney, and I feel like lately I'm seeing more and more uses in my matches because of that 3 movement, but the fact still remains that its health is insanely low, and I'm just going to give it D because it's very situational. Creep is definitely a B. It's good, and if used in the certain situations where your opponent's using a high cost dimensional phobie, you actually can trade up a lot with this Phobie, so the poison is just fantastic for getting rid of dimensionals and just a strong beat. Uni-Corn is interesting. The fact that a 2-cost Phobie can use traps is great if you can position Uni-Corn in a crucial spot. This card is no doubt an A tier. Finnigan is just a plain D. There's not much to say really when it comes to this card. It has low health, low damage, and the pushback could be considered nice, but its stats just make it unplayable. So Maggie's an odd one. It stands out from the rest because it's a cheap, high damage, quick moving flying unit. I really only use it if I'm baiting something over a wall, and I just really never use it, so I'll give it a C. Gesundheit is honestly a lot stronger than most people might think. That 1000 damage early on just makes your opponent rethink how they approach taking points. It's super consistent, and as long as it doesn't get cut out, it definitely deserves an A tier. Lastly, of the 2 keys, we have the 3 Jackalopes, Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontale. These cards are just like Ted and Jill, but have 1 more movement for 1 extra key cost. They're super effective when getting to a point, and the Resurrect just makes them 100 times better. All 3 of them get a definite A. Before we continue with the 3-cost Phobies, I just want to say I'm trying a new editing style, so let me know in the Discord or comments if I should stick with this, and feel free to leave a like because this editing style is taking me a lot more time, but it's definitely worth it, and let's get back to the video. Starting off, we have the Jackalope King. I do think this card interacting with the other Jackalopes is an awesome feature, but it's really not very effective and kind of just a niche. There's definitely better 3-cost Phobies, so he gets a C. I think everyone, even if you're starting out, will understand that Jar Cannon is super strong and rightfully deserves an S. Its 3 range is just insane and should almost be used every map, I would say, and it just really deserves its spot. Bad Sushi is just a complete waste of keys. I feel like this is just another version of Smiley, a weaker version, and it's really good in no situations, so it gets an F. Snowball, on the other hand, is great. It can get to middle points on the first turn and not die. It has a fireball, and it's dimensional. It's a very strong 3-cost unit, so it gets an A. So for Microscopic, I really think this is not worth the 1 extra key, even though the stats are slightly better. So I'm gonna give it a C. It's not the best, but it's okay. I just don't recommend summoning it. Spud is a tricky one to place because it's very good, but its health is low. The fact that you can summon a mini Hevo for 3 keys, it's just super effective. I think for me, I'm gonna give it an A. Murdering is by far the most controversial one I've discussed so far because it can one-shot Jar Cannon and do a massive amount of damage. It's a borderline S and A tier, although I will be giving it a high A tier because there are just some situations and maps where Murder Wing is simply unplayable, and you might want to just summon a different 3-cost because it's just sometimes not worth it. So Thunderrocks is just going to get a C. If your opponent is summoning a lot of mechanicals, then it can be fine. Its health is okay, but the damage is just not viable unless you're playing against a lot of mechanical units. Speaking of mechanicals, we have Misanthrope, who is just not a good 3-cost to summon. They're much better 3-costs, so he just gets a D. BoMangles is next, and it's a very solid unit. It can hold its own, although the 1 movement does set it back a bit, so it's B tier. Clinico is a great, cheap, consistent healer if you're looking to keep on the board. However, you really need to make sure it doesn't die and that the healing is super necessary, so Clinico gets a B. Gravedigger is great on a lot of maps. Its ability to break through walls or build them allows for many plays. Its health and damage are also quite consistent, so I'll give Gravedigger an A. One of the most tankiest 3-cost units is surprisingly Venus. Its ability to place traps and damage makes it viable in almost any map. It's definitely worth an extra key cost instead of Uni-Corn, and is definitely deserving of an S. The one unit that everyone hates to see and is very hard to get rid of is Stabby. Its passive to reflect damage is super annoying and is super tanky. Not to mention, it's also dimensional. Stabby gets a high A. Kaboom, much like the other bombs, is not very useful. The damage is nice and might be good for taking down things like Smiley, but it's just really not worth the 3 keys, so Kaboom gets a D. A very damaging and tanky unit is Snakey. Snakey is very good at pushing opponents back by flaunting its high damage. It's a good card, but some 3-cost cards are just better, so it gets a B. Finally, we have Minotaur. I feel like this design on this card is quite neat, and that's really all it is. The health is quite low, and the attacks won't see much connection, so Minotaur gets a D. Well, that's it for this video. Stay tuned for part 2 and 3, where I'll be going over the rest of the Phobies. If you want to join my Discord, I'll put a link below for that. If you want to leave a like or subscribe, that definitely helps me out. And until next time, take care, and I'll see you on the next one.